All right, let's wrap it up. NFC East. It's the Washington Commanders, the biggest surprise team of last year. They go from picking number 2 overall. They select Jayden Daniels, losing the NFC Championship to the Eagles, 12-5 last year. Some big offseason moves, trading for Deebo Samuel and Laremy Tunsil. So a receiver in Deebo, starting left tackle in Laremy Tunsil. And FanDuel has the over-under at 9.5 for the Commanders. I think they're one of the trickier teams to peg. I will explain in a second, but what are your initial thoughts on the Commanders?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that they scream regression this season, except Jayden Daniels might be special enough to offset all of that.
Yeah.
Right? That's where they feel a little bit like the New York Giants from a few years ago, except instead of Daniel Jones at quarterback, they have Jayden Daniels, and that could completely change what that means.
The Giants were absolutely. It's actually a really good comparison. They were massive regression candidates after they're making the playoffs in 2022. We're like, this is a rebuilding team that just overachieved in year one. You can make the same argument.
I mean,
for the
Washington
Commanders.
won one more game than the Giants that year. The Giants went and beat Minnesota, upset them, and that got everybody all excited. If they'd won one more game, they would have been where Washington was.
It's a really good comparison. First-year head coach, they surprise, they make the playoff run. The difference is, yes, Jayden Daniels versus Daniel Jones, but then also bringing in Deebo, bringing in Tunsil. I think they upgraded the roster from where it was last year as well.
Well, so the Giants they lost the run of themselves coming off the back of that, and they used that to kind of keep their players. Washington lost the run of themselves. Not a lot, but the excitement that Washington generated off the back of that run was used to then bring in players. Theirs is so that's where they're like Houston from a year ago. Like Houston surprised everybody. They overachieved. It's like, oh, look, we got our special quarterback. We aren't just good now. We can win a Super Bowl this year. And they went out and acquired players, and they got aggressive. So it's sort of Washington now are almost like a hybrid of the Giants from a couple of years ago and Houston from a couple of years ago.
The Texans are definitely the more exact proxy, though, just because it was picked number 2 overall, hit on the quarterback, C.J. Stroud in Houston, Jayden in Washington, and then the aggressive
in that area
on-paper moves that look great.
But I think in that area it is. But I don't think Houston were necessarily a prime regression candidate last year. I think things needed to spiral out of control for that to happen. Whereas I think the Giants. So that's why I think it's like a melding of those two things. They've treated it like Houston did, but I think they fundamentally are more like the Giants in terms of it's built on shakier ground that is potentially ripe for regressing.
So Jayden Daniels looked special last year. The other part that could regress is the fourth downs, like how efficient they were on fourth downs, but also just how aggressive Dan Quinn was on fourth down. I think they won multiple games specifically, just like Raheem Morris in Atlanta, specifically because of how aggressive Dan Quinn was on third down and then how efficient they were. And then you go, okay, how do you do that? Well, when you have the skill set of Jayden Daniels, and I think if you're trying to think positively here about Washington, the way they played down the stretch, I think they started to put a little bit more on Jayden Daniels' plate. They started to tap into his running ability more and more. I described him last year as, I think, the best scrambling quarterback in the NFL. I think it's between – I mean, Lamar's always in his own world. Like, if he wants to scramble well, he can.
Right.
But I think the guys who execute scrambling on a pass play the best are Jayden Daniels and Josh Allen. I think they're the two best at that particular skill. Lamar Jackson's the best overall running quarterback. But they started to lean Washington on Jayden Daniels' running ability in the design run game, QB sweeps and whatever else, in crunch time, on fourth down. That's still there.
Yeah.
Right? So it doesn't mean you're going to be 80% on fourth down or whatever they were at points last year. But you still have that really difficult to defend skill set of Jayden Daniels.
Those, the fourth down models, and this gets tricky because the smaller you slice these sample sizes, the noisier the data is. But those kind of fourth down models of, what the analytics says, they need to factor in who the quarterback is for that to be meaningful, because the league-wide fourth down data does not apply the same way to Josh Allen, to Lamar Jackson, to Jalen Hurts, and to Jayden Daniels as well as it does to some of these other guys.
Well, the right models do, but you might want to. The tweak would be like, hey, we're going to give it to Allen. Allen's keeping it, or Jaden's keeping it. Now run that.
Well, it's just that those guys, what I'm saying is that those guys, so normally if you had a team that was hyper aggressive in fourth downs throughout a season and maybe unusually good at converting them, you'd be like, well, there's another regression thing for next year. That's definitely going back to the mean. But when your quarterback is one of those guys, it might not, because you are dealing with the most, or as good a scrambler as any quarterback in the NFL. You are dealing with as dynamic a rushing threat, period, and a guy that changes the math up front. So, that is an area where I think Washington could continue to be excellent and steal win percentage points relative to other teams.
If you were looking at the Commanders roster last year, and this showed up in a lot of games that they lost, I think they struggled up front, stopping the run in some big games. They struggled from an offensive line perspective. Like, you would look at both trenches, and it showed up in the NFC Championship game against the Eagles. Both trenches, they were okay at best, probably on the weaker side. But again, if Jayden is that special, that does balance things out a little bit. He handles pressure well. He scrambles well. He's going to run when nobody's open. He had guys to throw to. Terry McLaurin was fantastic. But I think the line looks better with Tunsil locking it down at left tackle. That was a big question last year. Sam Cosmi at right guard. We just had Brandon Thorne talking him up as one of the better guards in the league. Tyler Biotish, I think, is very dependable center. So I think the line's better. Then the Deebo factor as well.
Josh Connerly coming in.
Josh Connerly could be
take a job.
Him and Andrew Wiley maybe battling it out at tackle. We'll see if Connerly can take over. McLaurin looks special. Hopefully he gets paid at some point. I think he deserves it at this point. I think if he was, he's been QB proof through the years. Now has his best quarterback in Jayden Daniels, and his downfield ability is special. Deebo was not healthy or the same player last year, but if he just turns back the clock 1 or 2 years, even if he is what he was last year, he's still a good player.
Yeah.
But if he turns back the clock a couple of years ago, where he's this move him around type of weapon, good receiver, but really great offensive weapon, man, this offense could be special.
Not just a good player, but even if he's what he was last year and only the slot receiver version of what he was last year, like even if they say you're not going to do any of the backfield stuff, you're not going to play running back, you're just going to be a wide receiver, like he's still an upgrade for them. So Deebo Samuel to me is, it's a good move and it's all upside. Even if he's just the lowest version of what he could possibly bring to the table, it's an upgrade of what they had. And you have all that extra room of, well, what if he goes back to being, the Deebo Samuel that was such a dynamic playmaker in San Francisco?
Hey guys, real quick, only 40% of our viewers are actually subscribed, so let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and now let's get back to the action. Run game wise, Austin Eckler, Brian Robinson, I think they're fine. There was a lot of talk about bringing in more dynamic running backs. Still think Chris Rodriguez, man.
Ja'Cory Crosby
Merritt. You got him. So yeah, I think the run game will be fine again because what Daniels brings to the table as the QB run threat. I think the Commanders going forward can probably afford to neglect the running back position a little bit, but when and if they do get, whether it's Crosby Merritt or a Saquon type, it's like, man, okay, I get it. They could create some serious explosives with the run game.
But that's how I would approach it. You talked about Dallas sort of doing things the way the analytics would say, just in terms of not investing in the running back position. Like Ja'Cory Crosby Merritt is the type of running back that I would want adding to that type of backfield every year. Like, take a guy in the mid to low rounds who actually a lot of people think has, he could be RB1 in any given backfield. I don't think anybody was saying that about Jayden Blue before the draft. Like, he was a running back of a type, dynamic pass catching type of option, but nobody was like, this guy's going to be RB1 in your backfield sooner rather than later. Crosby Merritt could be that guy for Washington. Like, if he ended up being the alpha back in that backfield in week 11, again, it wouldn't blow my mind.
Defensively, again, so the place where I would sour on Washington is just the personnel on defense. I know Dan Quinn's been a fantastic defensive coach. I thought they got after the quarterback pretty well as far as sacks go, but I don't think they were terribly disruptive last year. On paper, it's not a good defensive front. Deron Payne at defensive tackle, they paid Javon Kinlaw this offseason. I think Kinlaw can get after the QB, still struggles in the run game. Jazon Newton, Johnny, as a rookie, kind of had his ups and downs, but each of those guys, Payne's played better football in his career. I think Newton still has a lot of potential. I think Kinlaw is at least on the upswing as a dependable defensive lineman. So I think it's possible there. I love the way they deployed Frankie Louvu last year. He's an edge linebacker hybrid. They blitzed him a ton. He's a very effective pass rusher. Honestly, might be their best pass rusher off the edge right now. Dante Fowler's out. He had a bunch of sacks last year. Dorrance Armstrong, Dietrich Wise coming off the edge with Cleveland Farrell. I do wonder if this is a team that's in the Za'Darius Smith, Jadavian Clowney,
Well,
any sort of
they
edge
just
marker.
signed Von Miller. He's ready.
Oh, that's
to
right.
go.
They had Vaughn too. I wonder if they're also in the market for someone else.
Their big thing is though that they like so much of what they need to be good is guys taking a step. Either somebody like Johnny Newton taking a big step forward year two, or Deron Payne like going back to the player that he used to be. I mean, he's not been the same guy. Is it since he got paid, or was it even before that? But Deron Payne needs to be an impact player for this defense.
The other big question for me, remember how aggressive Adam Peters has been as GM. Trades for Marshawn Lattimore in the middle of the season last year. Lattimore did not look great down the stretch. We know what happens with corners. Sometimes they lose a step, and that's it. It's over. But that hit pretty quickly for Lattimore, battling injuries last year. If he's good, that changes a ton. They draft Trey Amos in the second round. I like him as a rookie. Mike Sanders did a fantastic job as a rookie playing on the outside as a guy that looks like wasn't expected to play on the outside, but he has a chance to move back to his more natural nickel spot. He's that, go hard, hustle dude that everybody wants on their defense, especially playing in the slot. So I think that trio of corners could be really good. Jonathan Jones as an insurance policy on the outside as well. I think so much is on Lattimore, though, to go back to where he was a couple years ago.
Yeah, it could be. It's also an area like that. The secondary generally is where you're concerned the most for this defense, maybe this team. Like if Lattimore is just kind of done at this point, then you're relying on Sandersill going back outside, probably Trey Amos, a rookie, to come in and play well right away.
I think they'd go Jonathan Jones and Trey Amos outside.
Maybe. And then you have a pair of safeties that are not necessarily dominant either. So that secondary could be a huge weakness.
All right, man. So for Washington, I guess my overarching breakdown here is if you're going man for man on their roster, I think they're 15th or so, 20th maybe. But I think the quarterback is a force multiplier. I think the head coach, I think Dan Quinn deserves a ton of credit. I think he was a good head coach with the Falcons, and then he was an excellent defensive coordinator with the Cowboys. He evolved as a defensive coordinator, and I think showing that helps me believe the guy's going to continue to grow as a head coach too. So I think you've got force multipliers at QB, at head coach, and then you have an elite receiver, an elite left tackle, a wild card in Deebo Samuel. I believe the Commanders, if you were just ranking them top to bottom, the roster is not there yet, but that's like 5 pieces that for a team that just went to the NFC Championship last year, they could make that run again because those 5 pieces are so strong.
And you've got Cliff Kingsbury at coordinator, stayed there.
Another one.
Kingsbury,
yeah.
I think, deserves a ton of credit for how he rebuilt his offense, how he created the whole environment there for Jayden Daniels to be really good off the back of his head coaching stint, which didn't end well, obviously, in Arizona. Keeping Kingsbury around, I think, has been huge for them as well. So, yeah, look, I'm very interested by this team because I think overall they're a lot weaker than certainly their playoff run would indicate. Even with the additions, and I like them generally, Laremy Tunsil, Deebo Samuel, like those types of veteran moves, I think are smart. It could still easily be primed for a second year letdown or regression, a bit like Houston from last year. But Jayden Daniels might be the guy that says none of that matters.
All right, make a pick, man. Over under 9.5 here for Washington.
It's so obvious that I want to go under and say they win like 9 games, but. No, I'll go over 10.
Okay. Let me preface this by saying I believe Jayden Daniels is a future MVP candidate. I've talked up the force multipliers that Jayden Daniels, Dan Quinn, Terry McLaurin, Laremy Tunsil can be for this team. But I do have the sour taste of being so high on the Texans last year. And the fact that I think there was some overachieving with Washington last year that will be tough to replicate. And I think it's a tough NFC. So I'll say under. Because you have to pick one. You have to pick over or under.
You do.
So I'll take under. Even though, again, I wouldn't be surprised if Daniels continues to take a step forward and they look like one of the best teams in the NFL.
It also, as much as I think it was an overachievement last year, it was only by like 1 game. Like if they had if they had lost in the divisional round to Detroit, that would have been about their right level.
Yeah, they were probably a toss-up against the Bucs.
Yeah,
right. Given where they were, they beat the Bucs. I thought the Commanders played great. They got some turnovers. The Lions didn't play their best game. Yeah,
the Lions, I think, were a better football team who did not play better on the day.
That would have been the exact proxy for the Texans if they just lost in the divisional round to a clearly better team.
Yeah.
But instead they pulled the upset and then lost to a clearly better team pretty handily.
And
in the NFC
Championship. I'm not saying they didn't deserve to win that game. Like, they did their part. They played spectacular. It's just the Lions did not play their usual level of football in that game, and they consequently what I believe is the worst team overall was better on the day. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
Check the Mic is live every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, so be sure to hit this subscribe button so you don't miss a thing.
The all-knowing algorithm is convinced that you'll like these videos as well, and frankly, who are we to argue?